I had a company. It was a marketing, what do you call it? Like a marketing consultancy. And like, hey, we have this client. We can't tell you who it is. But when you were a magician, like tell me about when you were getting heckled and how do you sell beer to children?
Hey, Bryan Miller here, and welcome back to One New Person, the show where we take a closer look at chance encounters to remind ourselves that every interaction is meaningful and every person we meet is important. Today's guest is Tim David, a leadership and influence expert and the New York Times bestselling author of Magic Words, the science and secrets behind 7 words that motivate, engage, and influence. I discovered Tim when I noticed his book in the business section of Barnes & Noble. It was just a few months after my TEDx talk combining magic and communication had started to go viral. So you can imagine my surprise when I realized the author was a former magician turned communication specialist, just like me. What were the odds? And he lived only an hour away in New England. I couldn't believe it. We connected online and hit it off instantly. I went on to hire Tim as a business coach, which over time morphed into a mutually beneficial personal and professional relationship. I was so psyched to have him visit me at my home studio in Connecticut to chat about all things influence and communication. We discussed techniques to shake people out of their conversational ruts, how to connect with someone you don't understand, all about Tim's brand new book, Flip, The 4 Levels of Influencing People, luck and its surprising relation to gratitude, and of course, Tim shares his story of a chance encounter with lasting impact. Remember to check the show notes on onenewperson.com for related links and additional resources. If you find this podcast valuable, please consider rating and reviewing it on iTunes and sharing it with your friends and colleagues across social media. And be sure to use the hashtag OneNewPerson, all spelled out, so we can find you and thank you. And now, please enjoy this wild and winding conversation with one of America's premier leadership speakers, Tim David. I was just thinking about, in the intros, I always say, welcome to One New Person. But I had a moment just now where I wanted to be like, welcome to 2 skinny magicians. This is excessive.
Yeah. I'm aging out of that category, though. I just got back from Barbados, man. 5 days of all-inclusive stuff in my face.
Oh, yeah. Was it good?
Yeah, I'm not going to be eating a lot tonight.
Well, we're going to go out for sushi.
I'm still You
don't have to eat a lot.
I went out with Greg for lunch, and I'm just like...
What'd you guys do for lunch?
I got like a salad, and I ate half of it.
That's what I just did. I was with a client I was doing a consult, or like a kind of a consulting meeting, like a follow-up on a thing I did with them. And they asked me this morning, they emailed, oh, before you get here, what do you want? We're ordering from wherever. And I just got like a salad. And I did the same thing. I ate half of it and brought half of it home. And I was like, do I have to put this in the fridge?
Right.
This is lettuce.
It's in my car. I got some tuna. Oh, it's going to smell great when I get back in there. 90-degree day.
Sushi doesn't really save as leftovers.
No,
I've tried
neither
it.
does quinoa salad with tuna on top. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a disaster when I open that up.
Excellent. Well, we're off to a good start in this particular conversation. So let's start here, since I already opened the can of worms about magic. I actually try to avoid bringing on too many magicians. I don't want it to be like a magician podcast, and I think I only had on 1.5 magicians in the first season. So I think you're like our token magician so far for the second season, but I want to...
Can I be the other half?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
You can be the other half. And I want to start there because, of course, you're not a magician anymore. Like, I'm not a magician. I mean, I guess once a magician, always a magician. But the question for me with someone who has an unusual job like I do when I start these things is kind of, these days, if you're at a social gathering, if you just met someone for the first time, and they say that silly question that we're all so tired of hearing, if they go, what do you do? What's your answer these days?
Yeah, I'm playing around with it. I'm moving it around. I am now answering that question right now. Well, I'm not a magician. I'll start with that. I literally start with that now.
That's a great answer.
Because what I found is the moment of what I call the verbal slap. When you shake someone out of that pattern behavior, what do? I'm an accountant. okay, what do I do? And there's just a regular pattern. They're not expecting magician.
Right.
And I've never been able to replace that, you know?
Right.
So I've come up with a few, attempts at humor. I used to say, well, you mean in addition to being an international bodybuilding champion? Obviously, you didn't guess that. So depending on the person, you feel the situation out. And I think that's an important part of the quote technique as well, is that it has to be a real individual. When you ask me, what do you say now? I almost kind of panic because I don't have a canned go-to. I'm just sort of playing around with this. Well, I'm not a magician. I'm not. I used to be, but I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just this week in Barbados. Because I'm looking for that. I'm a writer. Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I always wanted to write, and everybody has a book that they want to write, and they ask you questions about that. I'm a speaker. Oh, well, like a motivational speaker?
Yeah,
Nope, I don't want that. I don't want that perception.
Yeah, right. That they go right to Tony Robbins,
right.
And nothing against Tony Robbins, but it's a different era and a different style, and that's exactly. And I ask a lot of folks this who have unusual jobs, but I was so interested to hear your answer because we have such a similar thing. Former magician, now a speaker.
Right.
But like you said, every time in my career when someone said, "What do you do?" and say, "I'm a magician," people just light up. They're like, "What?"
Right.
They're all they want to. They have so many questions, and only one of them is, "Can you show me a trick?"
And isn't that why we became magicians?
Yeah.
Many of us. So for those who don't know, magicians, this may blow your mind. Socially awkward, right?
Almost always.
A little bit nerdy.
Yeah.
And the story goes, found a magic book, got into it, realized I could make friends. But the making friends piece is it's the very beginning of that connection, right? It's the very beginning of taking an interest. They take an interest, and when you see someone take an interest in you, you can't go back. You know what I mean? You have to. So we've tried. How do you replace that I'm a magician moment if you're no longer a magician?
Yeah.
Right. So the I'm not a magician doesn't get the, oh, that's so interesting. It gets the, what are you talking about?
Right.
It's a different kind of interest.
I'm not. Right. Yeah. That's so, you called that, and that's a technique from your second book, right? From Flip.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll get to the book really heavy a little bit later, but because I definitely want to dig into that. But the technique, you called it a verbal slap.
Yeah. So again, it's that shaking someone out of the robot mode so they can be back in human mode, for a little while, and you can actually break through, get through, connect, and begin some form of relationship that isn't networking, or it isn't that robotic interaction, or whatever that framed normal thing that they're expecting. You just sort of use these words to shake them out of that, So that's been so important. And I realized the importance of it when it went away. When people stopped reacting to, I'm a writer.
Isn't it interesting that when you lose something like that, you realize, I feel like it's similar for folks who have a really high position job, and then they either retire or get out of that or whatever, and they don't have that title anymore, CEO of whatever, or, Secretary of Defense or whatever it is.
Or defensive lineman.
Or yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was the starting quarterback on whatever. When you lose that, and then all of a sudden you realize people weren't nearly as interested in you as you thought they were. They were really interested in the title, the job, right? They wanted to know about that job. And I feel like that's why we need to have these follow-up questions, and we need to go deeper than that. And what you were just saying, really rings true for me, because I'm so tired of that question, what do you do? And so when people tell me what they do, my follow-up question is not, how did you get into that? Because that's what almost everybody asks second, and we are all a little tired of telling our own origin stories. My follow-up question is what I think you would call a verbal slap, which is I go, what do you love about that? and it's just not the question they're expecting. And so they start to be like, well,
I actually hate my job.
yeah,
What do you mean what do I love about it?
And so what's interesting, is that occasionally you get someone who does go, I hate my job. And I go, yeah, but what do you like about it? What do you enjoy about it? And then they'll find something, and then they'll find a second thing, and then they'll find a third thing. So I kind of want to, because we've already spent, I could feel it from how long we've already talked just about the fact that you don't know how to answer that question. Let's get it deeper. What do you love about what you're doing now? And maybe more to the point, you're a writer, you're a speaker, you're all these different things now. Where do you feel most at home in what you're doing now?
Writing.
Really?
I am very comfortable on stage, but it's a learned skill.
Yeah.
I think the introversion, creative side type of the magic piece lives with writing, but it removes the standing on the stage piece that goes along with magic, right?
Yeah.
Sure, you could create magic and be a YouTube magician, or you can create magic and not have to stand on a stage, be behind the scenes, write material for other magicians, whatever. But it's the creative outlet, the expressive outlet, the still connecting with an audience piece, because there's a reader that I'm writing to, and without the social awkwardness, without the travel, without the headaches,
Without the travel.
So the back to your question, I think I'm more a wannabe writer than a wannabe speaker. I think the speaking sort of funds the writing habit.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? And not that I don't enjoy the speaking. It's not that as an identity question, am I a speaker or writer? I go writer.
Yeah, it's and that's where I think you and I, with such a similar background and everything else, would diverge, because I still feel most at home in front of a live audience. And writing, I write well because I have a philosophy degree, which is just a writing degree. I mean, it's just we wrote 60 pages a week for 4 years. I mean, it was just we wrote.
Wow.
It was every class fulfilled the writing requirement. Every philosophy class fulfills the writing requirement.
But yet, I'm sure writing the book was not easy.
And then I got to the book, and I'm like, I'm a good writer. This will be. Everyone tells me writing a book is so hard. I'm sure it'll be a challenge, but it'll be fine. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was such a train wreck, and so it took me 3 years from start to finish to just get that book out. And I realized, I don't want to be a writer. Now, here's the thing: I want to have my work in that medium.
Right.
Because it's a different, even if you have 500 people in front of you on stage, 1,000 people, you can't spread an idea nearly as well with a live audience. You can impact the people in that room, right, in a really visceral way, but it doesn't spread out into the world the way that even a blog post can, or a book can, where you can go thud and drop a book on someone's desk.
Yeah, I mean, it is a ripple effect, and just like real ripples, they sort of the impact dissipates the further out. So a one-on-one, like my relationship with my son, the father-son relationship is one-on-one, and it's heavy investment of time, and it's gut-wrenching, and it's soul-shaking, and it's blissful, and it's all of the above. But there's a greater opportunity for impact with that relationship versus some stranger who reads a book. And then standing on a stage live is somewhere in between. Yeah. So, is it a quantity versus quality question? Is it? But I mean, there are some books and some writers whose voice, almost transcends the medium, and almost feels like it is a one-to-one.
I agree there. I mean, I have books that have profoundly changed my life, and that phrase gets a little thrown around a little bit too much these days. But like, there are books that have really, truly, made an impact, and it feels like it was a one-on-one conversation with the author. It makes you feel so connected with the author.
But I'll tell you this too, the moments of reward. When you feel a sense of reward based on work, right? Mm-hmm. So getting off of a stage to a standing ovation is rewarding. Hearing feedback this has been the best, and you know, we've been doing this 10 years, this is the best, blah, blah, blah. Like all that feedback, the positive feedback is great. Someone saying, you know, this book changed my life. You know, because I've had that experience, you've had that experience, and then seeing it like, I've never met you in my life. You know, I have no idea who you are. I don't know what your story is, but I know that experience. And that's my book sitting right there. And that was, and there's something too to be said about holding a book that you've written. It almost has the I'm a magician. Like when people see it's like, wow, it's still to this day, as easy as it is to write a book and publish a book, it still has you know, an aura. A book has a thing about it.
It really does.
And it's a thing that you send into the future. You know, there's that component too, you know?
Yeah, and maybe that's the fundamental difference. Being on stage is always in the moment, like that experience with the audience and the way that, even if you've told those stories before, as we all have, you know, the way you transmit it to them in that moment is always unique, and it's always just there and just for them, and that's really special. But a book
That's
is
why
like
they buy the book too at the back of the room.
Yeah.
They've had that experience, you know? So they both these experiences certainly, you know, has different kinds of value, you know?
Yeah, but the difference with the book is that the value of the book is that like it's like a time capsule. It's like a frozen moment in time. It's how that's how I feel about mine, is that I'm only 8 months removed from having published it. And it's like I've already read stuff back in that book that I feel a little bit differently on from when I published it 8 months ago. And so it was a slice in time for me. And I think that's a cool thing to, like you said, it sends off into the future in a way that
not just for future generations, but even your future self, like you said, you know?
Yeah.
And
do you feel that way about your first, you're a little bit removed from your first book now.
So yeah, we're like, what, 5 years in?
Magic Words.
It's sort of the first official.
Which is how I discovered you.
Right.
Which is a weird thing to say to someone in real life. But it's how I discovered you, the author, you know, before, you know, we met personally. How do you feel about Magic Words now?
I still like Magic Words. There are some chapters that while I was writing, they're painful to write. It feels like you're grinding. I'm grinding through something. And those are the chapters that I don't quite resonate with as much anymore. Not so much the content. I feel like because it's so research heavy, it's very much like science-based and crazy like all kinds of citations and stuff. Like it's different from Flip, the newer book, which is more stream of consciousness, story-based, applied.
Magic Words is dense. It actually surprised me with how many citations there were. I mean, it's full, which is great if you're into, like, I want this to be 100% research based, and I mean that's what that was. Let's back up a second though. Can you let folks know who are listening to this or watching this perhaps? You know, what is Magic Words? What's the book about? You know,
so I am fascinated with tiny levers making big changes and having big impact. Tiny difference here, big change here. Not just from an efficiency standpoint, you know, like less effort, greater result. Because we can all change the words we say. We can all do that. You know, it's not, it doesn't cost any extra money, doesn't take any extra time. You don't need any more education. Like you can simply change the words you say. It's not a big deal, but in many ways, it's like the big deal, like how we communicate and how we express and how we get what's up here in my head out into the world, into the heads of other people. And, you know, because at the end of the day, communication is ridiculously difficult.
Yeah.
And the part of the brain that does the speaking, right, the part of the brain that processes the speech part, is quite literally a different region of the brain and a different process of the brain that does the listening.
Yeah. So
it's almost like two different languages in our own head. So there's a language barrier just from speaker to listener, even if you're both speaking English. And what fascinates me is like almost the words in between the words. If you look at the list of words,
Yeah.
yes, but, if, because, someone's name, help, thanks. These are all simple words that are almost like ignored by a lot of people. And it's when you start peeling the onion layers back and you start seeing, oh, this isn't just a word. This is a concept, or this is an idea, or this is a bridge, or this is this, like the word yes, for example. We say it all the time,
Yeah.
We like to say yes, and we like to hear yes, right? Yes is indicative of acceptance, which is one of our deepest human needs. So when we hear yes, it has a bigger impact. It's a tiny lever that flips, it makes a big difference. Someone's disagreeing with you, you're having a big argument, you don't say, no, you're crazy. You don't start with that, yes, and, or yes, I hear what you're saying. You begin from that place of agreement. So it sort of scratches this deep itch that we have, And I think all these magic words that I've come across are rooted in what makes us human. What makes us, like, the fact that we desire approval and acceptance, the fact that we desire causality and reasons behind, why am I going to do, don't just tell me to do something, give me a reason why. What's behind that? Why do we need that reason why? So the words, as a list, if you just hear the list, it's not going to change your life.
Right.
I'm just going to work these words in and suddenly get better results.
Because.
Yeah, right, exactly. And every speech I do, at the end of the speech, when I was a magician, people would say, "Can you make my mother-in-law disappear?" After the magic word speech, people just walk up and say, "Tim, that was terrific because," and this, and they just throw a sentence full of magic words crammed into a giant ball, and they throw it at me.
You missed the point.
But it's they're connecting in their way or whatever. So.
No, absolutely. You and I are sharing a laugh about that because that's what people do. But that is actually one of the greatest compliments. I get people walk up to me, even if they're rushing off to the next thing at the conference, they run up to me and they go, "I like your hat," and then they take off.
Wearing it, right?
Yeah. And because it became this code word from Christ, it's on here, from that. So like, I totally get that. They walk up and be like,
they made that connection.
And
they were in that
Tim,
shared space. That's a simple takeaway. Let's condense this hour-long presentation. But so it's certainly not a list of words. Magic words is not a list of words. It is in many ways a list of again, what makes us human, and how to tap into, how to push those buttons in our brain that are already there, been there forever. Push those buttons in a way that creates more authentic, true, genuine connection, which sounds counterintuitive, that a technique creates a more authentic connection.
Isn't it that? Yeah, and I feel that rub too all the time, and that that if you learn these techniques, almost like these tricks, like communicative tricks, you will connect better in a more meaningful, authentic way. And but they really are just tools, though, and I feel like this stuff is learned. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't learned it, if you haven't been taught it, then you have a smaller toolbox, you have less tools in it, and that we have like this inner life that we want to be able to communicate with other people, but the primary way we do that is with language. And if you don't have these tools, because language is a skill. I mean, maybe language isn't a skill, communication is a skill, and you need to get through communication to get to connection, to connect with somebody, right?
Yeah, I think, and this is what I was up late last night talking to my dad and my brother about this, and we hear people complain to us a lot about other people. Yeah. This person's driving me crazy. I can't get through to this person. It's frustrating. I don't get it. Yeah. They're so emotional, and they don't get that A plus B equals C. Like, it's plain as day. They don't get it. And it's like, well, why are you using logic to approach this emotional situation? Well, because that's my tool. Like, that's what I have. I have a hammer. So I'm going to go hit stuff with this hammer because that's what I know, And we got to this debate of, well, listen, is it possible, like, we talked about yes earlier, like, is it possible to say to this person who's driving you crazy, yes, I understand why you feel this way. Well, but I don't. Okay, is it possible then to find something that you do understand. I understand that you're upset. I mean, obviously they're upset. And it got to the point, the debate boiled down to the choice between what I call it misplaced authenticity, right? I think people are authentic in the wrong place, right? You have two options to be authentic, okay? Yeah. You have an authentic, these are my feelings, right? I'm angry, so I'm gonna punch you in the face. That's my authentic reaction. I'm angry, I'm gonna punch you in the face. But yet, you are my cousin, my brother, my friend, my coworker, and I value that relationship. Yeah. So I'm being inauthentic to valuing the relationship, but authentic in the moment. It's just a misplaced authenticity. So what people, I feel, struggle with is the idea of, people come up with phrases like fake it till you make it so that they can compartmentalize this feeling of being phony. It's not being phony, it's that you're learning something new and it's just not natural, for you. But the desire to learn something new is rooted in the desire to connect with this person and have an ongoing relationship with this person. And that's authentic. That's authentic. So, we say, I'm sorry, even when we know we're wrong. I mean, we were right. Yeah. We say, I'm sorry, because the relationship matters to us and we're authentic to the relationship versus the details of the, who's right, who's wrong, and what matters, So I, for a long time, I wonder, because this idea of, when Magic Words comes out, even the New York Times were like, what this words that manipulate people? What is it? Oh, this guy is a magician who lies for a living. And so the ethics question has come up from day one. Yeah. When you talk about influence, you invoke the ethical conversation. It's just going to happen. It's going to be part of it, and if you're not having the conversation, there's trouble. If you're not worried about the ethical piece at all, there's an issue there, I think. But at the end of the day, we have to do what sits well with us, but also moves, not sits well with us so well that we're just stuck in our ways and I don't care, I'm mad, I'm gonna punch you in the face. That's just who I am. Like when people say that, oh, that's just who I am. They've given up. They have one tool, it didn't work. They're out of ideas. They give up. Everyone else is a jerk and frustrating to them. So the way I view it is this: as your understanding of other people, as your understanding, and when you start placing authenticity in the right place, stress starts to go down. You know what I mean? Like it's the frustration starts to come down. And some people would just so much rather be right. Just so much rather be right than be happy, and or be connected to another human being. In that one particular place, happiness aside. So I don't know. I think that's a can of worms, man. That is a huge can of worms, and I don't know what kind of resolution there is in Flip in the book. I just sum it up: be as calculating as you are genuine. Be as calculating as you are genuine. And it's again, it's a counterintuitive thing. There's another guy I saw recently too who talks about, if your technique, there's that word again. Let's say your body language. Yeah. Let's say your body language is off. Well, I'm cold. This is just how I feel right now. I'm folding my arms across my chest and just really scowling. But I don't feel that way inside. Well, there's a disconnect. So what's ethical? What is ethical? You aligning, inward for outward, or you just, I don't know, just being quote unquote your authentic self and not acknowledging other people exist.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think you really hit on it though. I mean, like that idea that, well, this is how I am, so I'll just be how I am, and why are you reacting like that? It's like you said, if you're sitting with your arms crossed and someone's talking to you and you're staring at the floor, this might be because you're cold and you listen better with, and you listen better, right? When you don't watch them or something like that. But the way it feels to the person talking is that you're not interested. And there's the rub, is that they feel like you're not interested. So there's a breakdown here. So if this is you trying to listen hard, but what it's accomplishing is them feeling like you're not engaged.
And here's the worst part.
Yeah.
The worst part is that person's feelings are wrong. That you're not disinterested. That person is wrong. So who bears the responsibility to make that bridge, to repair that bridge? The person who is sending the wrong signals, or the person who is interpreting the wrong signals incorrectly? You know what I mean? Like and this is why I cannot imagine how any communication ever happens. Ever.
Yeah.
Any successful communication.
And I'm not ambiguous on answering that question though. I 100% think it's on the communicator, the person who's trying to do the communicating. It's your intention doesn't matter as much as the way it's being received. And so that's how I feel about it, is that you need to go out of your way to make sure that you're communicating in a way that it's being received the way you want it to be received. Like that's how I feel.
I mean, as primarily a leadership speaker, as primarily someone who interacts with bosses who are responsible for gaining compliance, their biggest frustration is, I said to do this, they didn't do this, and I'm like, well, did you try something else? Well, like, yes, I said this again. Well, maybe whose responsibility? Well, they're getting paid. They should do it. Well, in a perfect world, but how's that working for you? Dr. Phil approach.
Yeah.
So it's who's responsible for the effort, in these cases. And I think the person who's responsible, I always look at it is whoever I'm asking, it's their responsibility. Yeah. If I'm asking you, it's yours. If I'm asking this person, it's theirs. It's that ownership of, because we all have to own our piece of it, and we have a bigger piece than we might realize.
Let me drill into this a little bit though, because you've bounced around a question that I get asked as part of my programs all the time, that I ask myself all the time. So I'd love to get your answer, and you've been dancing around it, which is, when you bump up against somebody that I gave an example a few minutes ago when you were like, to say, I understand, and like, but I don't understand, right? I don't understand them. So my question is, we desire connection. That is a fundamental human attribute, right? How do you connect with somebody that you don't understand? It's easy to connect with someone that you align with their values and beliefs. You came from a similar upbringing. That's easy. Right.
Yeah.
But how do you connect with someone that you don't understand?
Well, I think the question in itself is a step in the right direction. If you're asking, how do I connect with this person that I don't understand? I mean, you can put in a magic word right there and just say that I don't understand yet. Just the very virtue of that word may and understanding helps as well. So, for example, in the book Flip, we talk about the 4 levels of influencing people, hence the name Flip. And there is this, what I call, true hierarchy of influence. And this hierarchy has these 4 levels that we're talking about. And, the first base level is T for, true, stands for technique. The right words, the right place, the right body language, blah, 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 blah. That's the stuff everybody usually wants to ask me on podcasts. Hey, how do you get somebody to eat their vegetables? And what word do you say to, and I've had after Magic Words came out, man, unbelievable people, how they wanted to apply it, Lawyers, how do I persuade and influence juries? How do I influence jury selection? How do I trick this person into saying that? How do I, poker players, how do I influence my opponents to believe it's a tell when it's really not? It's a pseudo fake tell.
This is where ethics start to come in.
This is where Flip came from. Is the years following Magic Words, all these questions. I had a company. It was a marketing, what do you call it? Like a marketing consultancy, and like, hey, we have this client. We can't tell you who it is. But when you were a magician, like, tell me about when you were getting heckled, and how do you sell beer to children? Like, they started like trying to work around the issue and everything like that. But they're like, yeah, this client, their beer is viewed as like an old person thing, and we want to be like cool with the kids. I'm like, Oh, this is a lot of money. This is a lot of money that I'm about to say no to. Oh my gosh. But so you try to find those lines and those moments. So long story short, techniques, those are quote unquote the fun part. That's the instant result. That's the quick, as a magician, you change one line in your script. Oh my God, huge laugh all of a sudden.
Yeah.
One night to the next. Same everything else. One word. Holy cow, what happened there? So techniques are the fun part. But it's just level one. It's just like now you're just in the game. You have a couple of tools now. Okay, well, you have no idea how to build anything. You just got a couple of tools. The next level above that is relationship. I mean, relationship trumps technique. No matter, Oprah could go on TV and blunder her way through any kind of anything, and people will flock to whatever she's talking about, even if she's messing up everything, right? So relationship trumps technique. Mom is going to buy the Girl Scout cookies from the daughter instead, even though she can get them cheaper at Walmart. You know what I mean? Like that relationship beats technique. That's why we call it a hierarchy. It's just one level beats the next. But TRU, is understanding, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you have a good relationship with someone, but you just, like you said, you just hit it off with them. Right? It's natural. You come from the same background. You speak the same quote unquote language. You have the same quote unquote religion of what, in whatever that, however that's applied, philosophy, whatever. And it's a natural connection. Yeah. Right? So the question is, how do you connect with somebody you don't understand? Well, you realize once again that understanding has levels as well. And it's possible to gain not just understanding of an individual, because this individual I don't understand. I don't understand this individual. But can I understand, if I just understood the culture that they were from, if I just understood their tribe a little bit, I would get a little bit of if I zoomed out a little bit more, if I understood just how the human brain works and how psychology and how, and what is going on that is really causing this behavior. Here's a perfect example of understanding. This guy on the road is driving me crazy. I'm going bananas here. He's swerving, and I hate him. Yeah. And then you drive up and you see there's a lady given in labor in the back seat, and he's trying to get to the hospital. Boom, understanding goes up, stress goes down. Right? Understanding goes up, stress goes down. So the answer is you get at that understanding. You chase down that understanding, right? You use the avenues and the vehicles that you have available to you, maybe not for this time, but maybe for next time. And some of that understanding, in the book I have this, looks like a target, like a bullseye, and there's 4 rings of understanding, going from individual all the way up to human, as a species. But you can do your best. You can talk to that person. I mean, people say, talk it out. You're having a conflict with somebody, talk it out. But I don't get them. Ask them. They don't speak my language. I don't understand their culture, where they're coming from whatsoever. Well, that's what you're going to go and find out. And there's also a time and a place where a relationship is either unsalvageable or not worth salvaging. And you may have economists look at sunk costs. I've invested $90 million into this project. 10 million more to go. I've just realized this is a bad project. It's only 10 million more. I got to finish this project. I've invested $90 million into this project.
Nope.
You know what I mean? But if you started at zero, it's a whole other project. $10 million project, you haven't started yet. It's a $10 million project. You don't start that knowing, So if you can make decisions based in the present, say, look, this is a person I've known for 30 years. Would I, knowing what I know now about them, about the situation, in other words, is this a toxic relationship? Do I still, initiate a relationship knowing what I know about this person? And many times it's a forced situation. It's family. It's a coworker. Yeah. You've got to see them every single day. So that's when we start unpacking some of the other, more advanced.
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, it just makes me think of for the last 2 years in the States, all we've been dealing with the political discourse, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but I think this is the fundamental breakdown of what's going on. Is we've got we got people who all essentially want the same thing. We want a safe, happy, country and families and communities. And you got people just screaming back and forth and past each other, not even at each other, because there's this idea that they're so other that you can't even talk to them anymore.
Yeah, and that's why I said the value in the question is, how do I understand understand that person that I don't understand? Because most people ask the opposite question: how do I get them to understand me and my point of view?
Yes.
And that's, you're dead in the water. Game over. You lose right away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why there's value in the question: how do I create more understanding?
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about understanding and people and connection. And you just went to the toxic kind of relationships. So I want to kind of completely bounce all the way to the other side and ask you if you've got a story. This whole podcast is about chance encounters, the lasting impact, the ripple effect, which is something that you already mentioned, the kind of ripples. Do you have a story, personally or professionally, of someone that you met and either you had a great impact on them or they on you or both?
I guess hindsight, if you really look at it, that my parents met, for example, it's crazy that all of the, and the parents before them, and it's bananas when you think about it. It is.
Yeah, statistically impossible.
And every single person that you meet, it's like, oh, they exist in this century that I exist in, and they're also in this very place right now, and they're also, they also like this hat. It's so many things that, but I would say it was a mentor, and it was a mentor that mentored me from a distance. I had a chance moment with him, a day. It was a coaching sort of program. I invested in this day with him, and but the fact, it was way more money than I had at the time. He said no at first. He's not going to take me as a client. It was years of it was going to happen here. Nope. Then it was going to happen here, and it sort of things finally came to a head. Met with this guy. He said some things, right place, right time, maybe even the same message, but changing the messenger sometimes has value. Sometimes the fact that you're paying this guy a ton of money and actively asking his advice, I'll listen to the same thing my dad would have told me with way more intention, and it therefore has become better advice, It's that self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. But I would say him. His name was Rob Berkeley. He unfortunately passed away. He had cancer. But it's funny too, because the picture on his memorial website, he's standing in front of a bookshelf, and magic words is behind it on his bookshelf, and along with all these other people that he had similar encounters with. But the things he said, the way he said it. Sometimes it's little mindset shifts is all it takes. So,
was there anything really aggressively stand out, like a particular piece of advice or a push in the right direction, even if it doesn't sound like groundbreaking out loud?
Yeah, no. So it was simple. It was more of a one fell swoop. You're a magician, dude. What you think is possible is just this. Are you serious? And it just opened the floodgates on a whole on every other aspect of life. It made me question why am I not? And why not in this area? And why not in this area? And why not in this area? Who goes and thinks they can write a book? I mean, honestly, who does that? And what I mean by that is who thinks that they're going to go and write a book that someone's going to read or someone's going to publish.
Okay,
there is, I mean, and I know we're both authors, so I'm not, it's a self-deprecating if anything else, but it's there is a crazy ego inherent in you want to read my words, or and pay money to read my words, and you're going to publish this and give me an advance, and
when people reach out to me online. Or nowadays come to a live presentation and say, I've read your book and it did this or it did that. I can't believe there's I've seen the numbers. I know people have bought it.
Yes.
I know they've bought it. But when someone goes, I read your book, and in this chapter you said this thing, and that made me do this the next day, and I met 3 new people today because of whatever. I have a moment where like, oh my God, you actually read it? Like somebody read it?
Right. It is surreal. It is
Yeah.
surreal. And, but at the same time, in the same breath, it's also doable. I mean, there's people who do this.
Yeah.
I mean, how many books come out every day for crying out loud,
Overload.
So it's, certainly a doable thing, you know? And, but yeah, that not only, yes, you can, it's like absurd that you think you can't and that you're aiming so low.
Yeah.
That's absurd. I would say that's that one, and it's one sentence in the course of one day, in the course of this many years of trying to arrange that moment, and taking it. I had to call in a favor from a friend, and he almost couldn't make. His mom was in the hospital. He did that day with me. His mom was sort of just kind of stable, like that. And he's like, all right, listen, I never do this, but I'm gonna have my phone here while we're talking, so all the reasons it couldn't have happened, him passing, all that stuff. And yet, yeah, I'd call that chance,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I have a bunch of kind of moments from your books. I'd actually like to talk about Flip a little bit more. But before there's a few things that I'd really like to hear about from Flip, because I'm fascinated by this. But I have quotes, so that I know it's hard to remember what you wrote, isn't it? When people ask me about things in my book, I'm always like, I hope I can remember what they're talking about.
Right.
Because it took 3 years to write that.
Part of the reason I use like acronyms, the true hierarchy of influence, the itch targets, like all these. All these things.
So I do want to ask about a few of those, but let me just tag one more. When you just said, that was chance, and you and I from our private conversations, that's something that's on my mind a lot recently is luck. And I kind of I've been asking everybody that I think is really smart lately this question. First, do you believe in luck? And to what extent do you actually believe we can influence luck? Can we make ourselves more lucky? Because you said it was chance, but you also in the same kind of sentence were like, and I went out of my way to do this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and
yeah,
like there was luck involved, right? But how much of it was actually?
Well, Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star. Any one of those blasters could have knocked him out of the sky. He had to fly the route and use the Force, and his team had to, but was that a lucky shot? So I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, and I think therein is part of the reason I'm excited for you to write this book, and shed some light, because what I do know is that there are 2 camps. There is a camp of people who believes luck is it. It's all it is, and what I need to do is I need to place my intention so that when luck shows up, I'm ready for it, and it's that, maybe you call it the secret, maybe you call it manifestation, maybe you call it, prayer, whatever. There's that person who is like, just gonna put it out there and I'll get lucky, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't call it luck, but, and then there's the other person who is like, F that, hard work, step 1, step 2, step 3, best practices, do this, do that, make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And, neither one is right.
I'm not convinced by either of those, right. And that's the rub, right?
So what if you make me put a number on it, what percentage is luck? What percentage is good? Is it different for every situation? Is it different for every person? Is it different for every, and I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that luck is, because it's difficult to quantify, because it's difficult to, you can't isolate it. You can't.
Yeah.
Because, and which is why some people will say that's a miracle, and other people will be like, no, that's just birth. That's just the birth process, and this happens, and this happens, and that happens. Yeah. And some people will say, well, that was so lucky, and other people will say, well, no, that was when opportunity met a prepared mind. You did this, you did this, you did that. So you can't isolate it. You can't point to it and say that is luck. That's what it is. That was a lucky thing. I don't know. I don't I have no answers. I'll look forward to reading yours.
I'm asking all the smart people I know about it. Do you feel like you've been lucky?
I kind of have to. I kind of have to feel that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's a matter of, I mean, look, if I look at my life and I look around at the lives of the majority of planet Earth,
Yeah.
I am clearly lucky.
Yeah.
I also, as a writer, I work largely from home. I travel very little now compared to when I was a magician doing 350 shows a year, always on the road.
I'm gonna have a panic attack again.
I know, right? I feel like, well, I've worked very hard to be this lazy. So, I feel both. I feel the sense of, hard work the sense of hard work and I earn this does not lead me to gratitude. The sense of I am lucky leads me to gratitude. That one feels better, because it leads me to gratitude. And gratitude is like, thanks, magic word, thanks. It's the most beautiful magic word because it's the one that is beautiful when you say it and it's beautiful when you hear it. So and look into the gratitude research. Like you said, the book's very dense. There's a lot of reasons to be grateful.
Yeah.
So as a feel good, I would say I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm lucky.
Yeah. Right towards the beginning, you told a story of picking roses on the street. Do you remember the story? This really encapsulated so much of what the book is about for me. Can you kind of give us a rough version of that story?
Sure. Yeah, I tell this story all the time. Buying flowers as a gift for my wife. She graduated college. Very proud of her. This is how you show you buy the most expensive bouquet, especially when the father of the bride is standing right next to you, right? So we've always had that friendly rivalry. My favorite example is in the book. I'll just leave it as a mystery, but he's a funny guy. So anyway, we walk on. He's like, I'm gonna hold off till after lunch. I don't want to carry these around. We go to lunch. We come back. He sees another flower vendor who was very sort of the opposite of the flower vendor that I went to. I went to the crowd where everybody's, he's shouting $20 for these, $10 for these, $5, and there's a big crowd around and people are shoving money into his hand and he's like just like a carnival barker. This other guy on the other side of the street you're not even sure he's supposed to be there. Flowers? Anybody need flowers? He doesn't even have flowers. He has a cooler by his feet, and he's just sort of. He looked like it was illegal, whatever he was doing. Like he shouldn't be there. And so my father-in-law smells an opportunity, and the guy opens up the cooler. He's like, "Well, here's what I got," and he pulls out this beautiful bouquet of roses that made my $25 saran wrap wrapped, just wilted roses look embarrassing, Yeah. It's like, oh, these are beautiful. How much for these? And the guy says $20. So I was so mad. Less money, better deal. And he even had better service because as soon as I told him my story, I'm like, that guy over there is selling them for $25 for this. He takes my flowers, adds his beautiful flowers, adds the baby breath, the ribbon, the nice sort of flower case, wraps it all up. Free. Here you go. Done. And I'm like, okay, better price, better service, yet you forced me to settle for second best because you wouldn't open your mouth and let me know that you were here, So I think like you said, the crux of is influence an ethical pursuit, I sort of end the story with, hey, this book is for nice flower guy, because I think we need more nice flower people to have a louder voice.
Yeah, and I think that comes right back to where this whole conversation started out all the way at the beginning. It's that ethical question and when that idea of influence being something that's kind of sleazy or you're making people do stuff. And it's like, yeah, it can be used for that. Like, right, you brought up Star Wars, like the Force can be used for light or for dark, right? But in all seriousness, though, like communication is really powerful. Language is really powerful.
I've taken this to recently. I've been thinking about this, and I've had a bit of an aha moment with this. The true hierarchy of influence, we've only gotten T, R, and U, techniques, relationship, and understanding. E is the one that trumps them all, and that's ethics. It's not just a matter of you have to be influential, but gosh, by the way, just to appease people, you probably should throw some ethical components into what you're doing here. Like, we're a company, oh look, we're green, we recycle this one thing. It's not a token thing that you just add in. What happens when you, and ethical influence is not using sleazy influence techniques as a means to a positive end, okay? It's not the ends justify the means. The problem is when you use the sleazy, unethical means, your influence drops. You become a person who, the techniques are influential, right? And when you reach the fourth tier, in the fourth level of influence, it's not that you are now an influential person. You are a person who doesn't do influence, you have influence, right? So, and the only way to get that, and Adam Grant talks a lot about this in his book, Give and Take. He really, really did a fantastic job of convincing, nice guys do finish last, but they also finish first. In the short game, in a 100-yard dash, sleazy guy is going to win. In the marathon, the ethical guy is going to win. Yeah, so the aha moment is that it's not good enough to use influence just to an ethical end, because the process of influence itself also has to be ethical every step of the way, right? It's not an ends justify the means kind of way. And it's, again, this is not a moral argument. Like, I never wrote this book to lay out a moral argument and to say let's all be nice people. I truly wanted to know what makes you the most the person of influence. Like, what is it? What is it that you say? And well, it's not just technique, and that's where this hierarchy developed. So it's much more than that, and the ethics is it's central. It has to be from the beginning through to the end, and then it's more effective. It's more effective.
So where do we find? Where do you want folks to go find you these days?
I would say timdavidspeaks.com is probably a good home base.
We just lost the video. Did you hear that?
Tim David.
We still have audio.
Thought you had a cat.
We're good.
timdavidspeaks.com is probably a good home base. It's got information on the speaking programs. How do we help our workplace? Again, I primarily do leadership stuff. I'm asked to do a lot of sales stuff. I'm asked to do a lot of how do we sell in an ethical manner, and how do we connect better with our clients and our customers? How does our sales leaders connect better with and motivate the troops better? But I think the home run swing, the wheelhouse for me is leadership. People who have a team of people that they need to play nice together, and they're forced into a cage, and they're either going to eat each other alive, or they're going to thrive and do something amazing.
Someone in who's looking for more on leadership, are they better off starting with magic words or flip?
Oof. I would say that it's a personal preference. With flip, there was a companion book at the time. It was called True Influence for Leaders, and it literally is. It's like a 180 page. It's bigger than flip. It's bigger and longer than the actual original book. So there's less direct stories, because I was collecting stories of magic words. And this, to answer your question, magic words is data driven, practical. Say this is what you can expect. Here's how it is received in the human brain. Here's the science behind what happens when you hear your name. Did you know that your initials can actually determine major life decisions? Like, what? So are you serious? And when you hear your name, something happens in your brain that just we don't understand. But we have mountains of data to suggest that people whose name is Chris prefer Coke to Pepsi because it's got the same first letter in the name. So
research is so ridiculous,
right? And it's one of the most. But the name letter effect is one of the most consistent find in the whole book. It's one of the most as far as the number of, because people keep going back to it. They're like, no, they didn't do it right. Let's try this. Holy shit. No, wow. that Larry's become lawyers more often than John. Are you serious? Major life decisions of like, yeah, it's crazy.
Do you have anything, just curiosity, for the show notes on the website? Is there a direct link outside of I know it's in Magic Words. Is there like a link you could give me before this ends up going out? To that research at all, that people, if they want to check that out, like directly, I'm going to link them to your books, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, there's mountains of it. I mean, if you want to Google name, letter, effect, you can start sifting through it. Some of the primary research studies, the original, you don't want to necessarily go on Psychology Today and read an article that somebody like me just wrote. If you want to go to the primary research sources, then that's all cited in Magic Words.
I mean, yeah, right. It's all in there.
Which go to a bookstore, flip through.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things in my speeches that just blows people away. And when you're writing an email, tell Tom that your product is terrific, and tell Fran that it's fantastic, and
weird.
Commandeer the brain's attention, and use. Obviously, hi, Jim. That should be at the beginning of every email. And forget as a technique. What does that do? Like, I acknowledge you as a person. That's why. I talked about Magic Words having a root in what makes us human. We all want to be acknowledged as individuals. We want to be valued as individuals. We don't want to just be a number or another spam email that you're blasting out. We want to be seen and acknowledged and valued as an individual. So it's simple using a name. I mean, if that's going to take a leap in that direction.
What's so funny about that stuff, and this may be a weird tangent right at the end of this, but like what's so funny about that stuff is, and I'm sure you've read all the same studies, that those techniques, the tactics, the tricks, quote unquote, they work even when they're doing it.
Yes.
And what's amazing is that I'll get an email from, weekly email from one of the, speakers that I follow or authors that I follow. And the first is, hey, Bryan, exclamation point. Now, I know, because I do email marketing, that she didn't actually write that to me.
Right.
Everybody got the same email, and there was a code, a computer program that shoved my name in there.
Yep.
I know the trick. I still feel like it's personal when it happens.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yep. And within industries too, like the word magic is a magic word for you and I.
Yeah.
Because we have, and similar to our name, you hear your name your whole life. You associate your name with yourself. You associate magic with part of your identity.
Yep.
But it's also a word that you hear a lot, and it's why you saw Magic Words on the shelf. It's why I just did another interview earlier today. The guy said the same thing. He's another magician. I saw it on the shelf. I had to buy it. It jumps out at you, and names are the same way. So that's Magic Words. Magic Words is the here's the tactic. Here's why it works. Here's the understanding behind it. Here's some studies. Here's some proof, because there's some outlandish stuff that like a little 3-letter word or a word that's just a conjunction or like why does that matter? And so what if I take that word out of the sentence? Well, I'll tell you what happens. Here's what happens when you remove that little word that you thought was unimportant. So Magic Words is very much tactical, practical. Flip is the accumulated stories of people using influence. It's accumulation of a lot of interviews I've done with people like Robert Cialdini, of people like Chris Voss, the lead hostage negotiator.
I was thinking of Voss a few minutes ago, but I didn't want to step on the moment. Yeah.
So that should be my chance encounter. Chris Voss should be my chance encounter.
Oh, seriously? Oh, you have a Chris Voss story?
I have a crazy Chris Voss story.
Will you give me a minute to toss a different memory card into that camera, or do you want to just tell me right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a bathroom break.
You want to do that?
Okay, leave the mic
because I want to
on
hear the Chris Voss story. Yeah, do that.
Leave the mic on in the bathroom?
Yeah. Or take it off, whatever you want to do. I don't know. So for the listener, in case you're not...
Chris Voss never came up. It was just like, you guys hit it off. I just interviewed him, and you should... I'm like, okay.
That literally, that's how I met Peter Gazzardi, the legendary book editor, who's by the time anybody's listening to this will have already heard his conversation this season. Okay. He was Stephen Hawking's book editor. Susan Cain Quiet, he was her editor. Deepak Chopra, like all these... he's 40 years in the business, legend. And I finished recording a podcast interview. We had never talked about him or anything related to him. Turn it off. I'm packing things up. We're chatting. And she goes, I need to introduce you to my friend Peter. And I was just like, yeah, your friend Peter, sure. Like,
Right,
let me
right.
introduce me. And that's so for the listener who doesn't know, Chris Voss is former lead hostage negotiator for the
Now, and we were on
FBI,
we were on a thread too where his name came up, and I was answering I was answering the question, which one is for leaders, which book?
Yeah.
So all right, so so Flip is a collection of stories, interviews, and an exploration more in the practical, applied influence working in seemingly impossible situations, such as a hostage negotiation. You asked earlier, how do you connect with that person you just don't see eye to eye to?
Yeah.
Chris is probably never going to see eye to eye to this deranged lunatic who is holding up a train for hostage, hijacking a train.
Yeah.
He's not going to like just naturally hit it off with this guy, you know. So he's heavily featured in the understanding, and that wasn't in the original book. It was after, I believe it was after in the second version. But anyway, so for the people who want sort of the story based, this is impossible influence. You're not going to believe what this guy was able to do with sixth grade students in teaching them ballroom dancing, and how he holds their attention and engages them is incredible. And this is how he did it. And this is how he does it. So it's, stories, interviews, applied influence, which was actually a potential title for the book, Applied Influence.
Oh yeah.
But
AI.
Ended up going ended up going with Flip for some reason. A reader suggested it, and things were moving fast. But anyway, so Chris Voss, did you want to?
I would love to hear how. I would love to hear the story. You said that should have been my chance encounter.
Yeah. So the fact that I was introduced to Chris in the first place was a chance encounter, and what Chris said to me. So I was kind of like, he's he's kind of a New York City cop sort of persona. And he's kind of gruff and to the point and this and that. And so I asked him, after we did our thing, and he's talking about, because his whole thing is, well, you got to understand the person. You got to understand the person. You got to know what their religion is, and I don't mean what God he's like, you got to know their religion, their philosophy. You got to know what makes them tick, And so, we go through all that, and I'm like, all right, listen, hey, how'd you get this gig? How'd you get to become the lead hostage negotiator of the FBI? Because, I'm sure that would be, it's just cool to say that, right? Like, how did you get that gig, And he's like, well, listen, I was a police officer for 8 years, Police, I was in the law enforcement. I was a psychology major, I got a master's degree in psychology, and I had all these training programs and certifications and everything. So when I went to apply, they're like, that none of that means anything. That is useless. Go volunteer at a suicide prevention hotline for 2 years, and then come back and talk to me.
Yeah.
So he did, and he said, greatest empathy training in the universe at a suicide prevention hotline. So I did it. I went and volunteered at a suicide prevention.
Did you really?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. I'm like currently I take calls at a suicide prevention hotline.
No kidding.
And obviously I can't really, we don't really talk about what the contents of the calls are, but I can agree and say that even the training, the way they approach this problem is so counter to whatever you think they do. It's so different, and it has led me to this realization. It's like, oh my gosh, because I'm fearful. It took me years to like finally bite the bullet and say, okay, this is the year I'm going to do this. Like, because I try to do something every year that is. I'm a writer. I sit home a lot. I want to get out of the house. So every year I try to do something different. I'll take a martial art. I'll learn a language. I'll do something. So this year it was this year. This is years since the whole process with the seed was planted, and so the training is I'm like, what am I going to say? How do we talk somebody down off a ledge? What do you say to somebody? And the very short answer is, you don't talk people out of suicide. You listen them out of suicide. You don't talk people into a sale. You listen them into a sale. The biggest problem with the book Magic Words is the focus on the words, right? But the redeeming value is that they're these tiny little, there's these little tiny in-between words.
Yeah.
So it is the 90-10 rule. You are 90% shutting up as a suicide prevention, crisis intervention volunteer, trainee, whatever.
Yeah.
You shut up 90% of the time. There's a few exceptions. Because we get some homicidal callers, we get some active situations, we get some, there's a lot of stuff that you can't just use empathy. You have to kind of legally, you gotta get
my
to
wife's
dispatch.
My wife's a therapist.
So you understand
that.
that.
I got that.
But for the most part, that process, and then so going through the training, and then living it. And my knee-jerk reaction to be like, oh, well, have you tried this? Oh, no.
Yeah, that's
and
advice.
And still leading a conversation with the 10%, but using that 90%, and that's where the therapy happens. And by therapy, I mean, I know your wife's a therapist, but that's where the healing, the de-escalation, the whatever it is, that person feels heard, valued, and understood.
Yeah.
It's beyond it's beyond just active listening. It's beyond just asking probing questions. It really is this process that they have, and I just seeing it work over and over again, and seeing my own body. And I thought I was pretty darnly not only well trained, but I train on listening and motivational and influence techniques and all this stuff. So thinking I'm really good at this, or would be really good at this, and being completely thrown for a loop has been, oh God, do I say this word? Thrilling. But I know it's a dark topic and everything like that.
I get that.
But seeing it work over and over and over again. Because the calls are constant. It's not you sitting and waiting. And
how long are you on a shift when you're doing that?
I do a 2.5 hour shift. So it's because it's
That's
volunteer.
a long time to be taking constant calls like that.
Yeah. You're on a call. Sometimes you're on a call for 40 minutes.
That's
one call.
That feels like that would be emotionally draining.
They have these psychological barriers in place that help you to compartmentalize the draining aspect of it, but also the exhilaration of the successes balance out, but yeah, it is a very unexpected training and a total out of left field. I'm doing a podcast interview. Somebody says you need to talk to this guy, and then talk about changing your life. And
there's a ripple. That's a serious ripple.
Oh, right.
And it could ripple even further if I decide now, because I've heard Chris talk about that before.
Oh, yeah,
I've been oh yeah, I should totally do that. But every time I hear him talk about it, I should totally do that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
now knowing someone who actually went and did it because of him, that's making me feel maybe I really should.
And it wasn't even supposed to be my thing this year. This year, my thing was supposed to be journaling. And I bought this journal. I got all, January 1st, I open it up and I'm like, question 1, what are you going to contribute this year? How are you going to contribute, to other people this year? And I'm like, oh. And I just kind of offhandedly, I wrote a few ideas down, and then I was like, should I? Okay, yeah, this is the year. This is the time. Okay, this is the one.
Maybe you think I should go do that next year? That should be my thing?
I think the way Chris Voss recommends it to everybody, and universally, is the way that I'm beginning to recommend it.
Yeah.
And it's not something you read about, and because there's books these are the techniques that we use, and this is I'm with a well-known organization, and these are the techniques. So they have you could dip your toe in a little bit. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that because you'll this won't work, or you'll talk yourself out of it, or what. You've got to see it. It's got to be, it's had to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend it as just a human exercise, to make yourself more empathetic, more a better listener, a better problem solver, a better influencer, truthfully.
Yeah.
And yeah, profound.
Crazy. Well, thanks for taking the extra time to share that. You want to go get some dinner?
Let's go get some eats.
All right, man. Tim, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So glad I was able to work out.
Before you start verbally slapping people at your next networking event, here are a few takeaways from this episode. First, words matter. Way more than we realize. And often it's the words in between the words, the ones we pay the least attention to with the potential for the biggest impact. Second, relationship beats technique. Every time. You can spend your life studying communication, influence, and leadership techniques, but in the end, the deeper the connection, the more likely we can achieve understanding. And finally, you don't do influence, you have influence. And the most effective influencers are those who build ethics in right from the beginning. Scammers get short-term wins, but ethical influencers build long-term careers. And that's the true hierarchy of influence. For more of Tim's work, including free resources to become more influential, head to timdavidspeaks.com. Check the show notes for links to magic words and flip, plus anything else we mentioned in this episode. Remember to subscribe to the One New Person podcast via your favorite streaming service on onenewperson.com. And share this or any episode with your friends and colleagues on social media. Use the hashtag OneNewPerson, all spelled out, so we can find you and thank you. Send questions for me or any of my guests to onenewpersonpodcast@gmail.com. I'm Bryan Miller, this is One New Person, and we'll see you next time.
I was in Barbados, and people ask, hey, what do you do? They're actually from Massachusetts. They're like, hey, what do you do? I'm like, well, not a magician, and they're like, okay. I'm like, well, I used to be. I was a professional magician, did this, did that, and then I had kids. I couldn't be gone. And it was all during my college years. I didn't go to college. I never had a job. I have no marketable skills. I have this, and the guy, I'm not even halfway through. The guy's like, what about public speaking? My wife's like, I'm like, what about being a psychic?
That is very funny.